now speak with a professor of law and the chairman of the Presidential Committee Against Corruption, Professor Itse Sagay. He joins us from his home in Lagos. Thank you so much, Professor, for joining us tonight on the program. Let's take a look, broadly speaking now, from your standpoint, either officially as PACAC or as Professor Sagay, how would you assess the situation with the NDDC, historically speaking, and of course, the events of the past few days?
Yes, I view the situation at the NDDC as it affects the Niger Delta as a whole as a major tragedy. That region, and I do come from that region, is one in which one can say that the people are suffering in the midst of plenty. They are living in a wretched life in the midst of plenty. They have no roads, no power, no water, none of the normal, excuse me, comforts associated with modern life. And God somehow supplied them with an abundance of natural resources, particularly the oil and gas. And it has always been the orientation of the governments of this country, whether under the British and then now under our own rule, that something should be done about the condition of the people of the Niger Delta. And of course, that's why the Willings Commission was set up during the colonial era. And now NDDC under Obasanjo set up early in this civilian era. The idea was to get funds subscribed by major operators in Niger Delta, including the government and the federal government itself, for special or specific investment for the development of that area. But what has happened since then, and it's getting worse, because at the beginning it was not so bad, is that the people who are appointed, because by the Niger NDDC Act, the Niger Deltans themselves occupy the major positions there. The chairman, managing director, executive director, administration and finance, director of operations and so on, operations, or the person in charge of the actual development work. All Niger Deltans. And the sad aspect of it is that with the fate of Niger Deltans in the hands of Niger Deltans, that region has suffered the worst setback it has ever experienced throughout its history. These Niger Deltan officials come there, simply collect all the money and divide it among themselves, pretend and deceive the country that they are engaged in some development work, whilst all they are doing is pilfering. And the level of pilfering is mind-blowing. We are talking of billions, 30 billion, 50 billion, 80 billion, 150 billion. It's as if money has become, I don't know what to call, has become so cheap.
So, Professor, let me, if you can summarize how you perceive the performance of the Niger Delta, the NDDC in the Niger Delta over the last few years. How would you rate it? Would you say it's been a success or a failure?
No, that's the point I'm making. I mean, you should be able to draw a conclusion from what I've said. I have said, for me, the saddest aspect is that it is Niger Deltans who are in charge of that area. And all they have done is to callously, very, very callously share the money which has been contributed by various institutions towards the development of Niger Delta amongst themselves. They have looted the funds. So there can be no development.
So let's look at Professor.
Development that we see now is just a pretense. They're just a token to support the pretense that anything is going on. So it's just the funds are just there for them to divide among themselves. What they do with that huge sum of money, I don't know.
So, I mean, because the president said that he needed to do a forensic audit of the NDDC over the last few years, according to the president, that no development has really come up since the inception and since when NDDC came up. But if you look at what has happened over the last few months, there are allegations and counter-allegations of contract scams and how monies have been recklessly spent at the NDDC. The NDDC and members of the National Assembly have been at loggerheads. What do you think is happening there?
What is happening is that we have people who are predators, who have simply descended on their own people and despoiled them of funds that are meant for their development. And obviously, there's going to be a clash because they would not be able to explain what they have done with the money. They cannot show projects and developments. The state of the Niger Delta remains the same. No power, no water, no roads, suffering and misery in the midst of plenty, whereas these people are simply filching away all these huge funds that ought to have really turned the Niger Delta into an Abuja type of area. If all the money had been spent in developing Niger Delta, we should be talking of Abuja B, let me put it that way, in the Niger Delta. But what do we see? Total underdevelopment, total misery, total wretchedness.
Prof,
so I don't see how the National Assembly can be comfortable with these people.
So let's take a break, Prof. But when we come back, under the President Buhari administration, he says that he wants to fight corruption. And we are hearing all of these allegations of corruption. When we come back from break, you'll be telling us what the president needs to do to fix this problem, especially the billions and billions of naira we are hearing that have been siphoned in the NDDC. Those are allegations, and we'll be hearing more from Professor Sagay when we come back from this break, everyone. Join us again. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. Let's get back to the conversation with Professor Itse Sagay, the chairman of the Presidential Committee Against Corruption, PACAC. Thank you so much, Professor, for your time tonight. Let me ask, I'm curious, though, how does it mean that the NDDC has so much powers in terms of how they spend the monies, such that at some point, it does look like there is no check and balance in the spending of the money. And at the end of the day, we hear about the contract scams which has happened over the years. Why do you think this has prevailed?
Yes, I think it's part of the sloppiness, particularly in these agencies that are not directly part of ministries. Because normally, you have your budget, it is approved by the National Assembly, you spend it in executing projects. At the end of the year, you have an auditor, and that auditor will audit it. The Auditor General will go through it, and then the National Assembly will see it as part of its oversight responsibilities. But obviously, this has not been happening because it has been an open sesame to these people year in, year out, where they're looting everything there, and nobody is saying anything. They do it, you get away with it, and then somebody will come, someone else will come, have his own turn, and get away with it, and the Niger Delta continues to settle in its rot, while these people are completely salvaging it.
Professor Sagay,
so
if you look at if you look at what is happening over the last few days, when the interim management committee went to the National Assembly, there seems to be a heated argument about how this money's allegations and counter-allegations. What do you think the president needs to do urgently over these allegations?
I think the first thing the president has to do is to clear all of them out of the place. All the people involved. It's, I don't know, the way some appointments are made. When some of these appointments were going to be made, I spoke in my private capacity because we were not consulted as PACAC, that one or two of them were not suitable, were not fit for the responsibilities they were about to be given, but they were still given. And now we are seeing the results. The whole place is a total mess, accusations and counter-accusations, and they are talking of billions. It's mind-boggling, very frightening. And what worries me is that the rest of the country will say, well, we've had sympathy for your condition, we made provisions for you, but your own people have gone there and despoiled everything. It gives a very bad name to the Niger Delta and its peoples. So I would suggest that everybody there should be cleared out, and that the president should now appoint a new set of people very quickly in a very temporary, under temporary conditions, so that a permanent board and management can be established in the place, who would then be monitored. I do not see why auditing, forensic auditing cannot take place when you have a regular board. I don't see the point of having this temporary board, which is an anomaly, which has proved to be such a disaster. So my view is that everybody should be removed right now, clear the place, sweep it clean,
All right.
start
Prof,
afresh with a new set of people.
Prof, just in 20 seconds, if you may, does this put a dent on the Buhari administration's fight against corruption?
Not necessarily, because one, this is not a new thing. This has been going on. It's just that it's come to a head. And any fight against corruption will be affected in this manner, in the sense that whilst you are fighting against corruption, there will still be corrupt people who would want to challenge that fight. And as long as you deal with them, when you come across them, it's not a dent. As long as you do not accept what is happening, you do not encourage it, you do not see it and allow it to continue, it cannot be a dent. Anyone doing what these people are doing ought to be taking a risk for which they should pay heavily.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the government will ensure that that happens.
Professor Itse Sagay, Chairman of the Presidential Committee Against Corruption, PACAC, thank you so much, Prof, for talking to us tonight.